She spent years fighting to be seen in rooms that were never built for her. So when Barack Obama publicly questioned leaders like her on live TV, she didn't lash out. She spoke from the heart and left the room silent. The lights inside the Arlington PBS studio were bright. Too bright, Jasmine thought. Not hot, just sharp. They didn't give her a headache, but they made it impossible to hide anything. Not a blink, not a twitch, not even the smallest doubt. She adjusted the button on her jacket one more time, even though her stylist had already done 3 rounds. Everything sat perfectly, the lapel, the hair, the powder. But the nerves were in her stomach, not on her skin. Jasmine Crockett had been here before. Live interviews, radio debates, Sunday shows. But this was different. A nationally televised roundtable with 3 senators, a Harvard political scientist, and a PBS moderator known for pressing hard. The topic was loaded. The future of progressive leadership in a polarized America. What made it worse, if she were being honest with herself, was the surprise element her aide had warned her about earlier that morning. She wasn't told much, just that the producers were planning something special mid-segment. No one gave her details, and the last thing she needed was a curveball when every word she said would be clipped, tweeted, dissected, and thrown back at her by morning. She looked around the room. Across from her sat Senator Glenn Torvald of Oregon. Early 70s, white hair like linen, polished sentences like he'd been reading them in the mirror for years. Next to him was Senator Carla Denton from Arizona, known for her lukewarm takes and tendency to stay on the fence. Then there was Dr. Reynes, a political science professor who reminded her of someone's favorite uncle, brilliant but slightly smug. And finally, there was her, the youngest at the table, the only one who looked like her, the only one who didn't come from money or private prep schools, the only one with Twitter trolls who still called her angry every time she asked a tough question in a House hearing. The moderator leaned forward and smiled for the camera. "We're live in 30 seconds. Jasmine glanced down at her notepad. She had notes, stats, lines she rehearsed on the car ride over, but all of it felt far away now. She wasn't nervous because she didn't know what to say. She was nervous because she knew exactly what she wanted to say, and she wasn't sure they were ready to hear it. She felt her phone vibrate gently in her jacket. She'd forgotten to turn it off. One quick glance, it was her mother. "Proud of you. Watching with the girls. You've already won." She swallowed hard. Her sisters were watching too, back home in DeSoto, Texas, probably huddled around the old flat screen in their mother's living room, half a dozen cousins crowding in, calling out, "She's on." That's what kept her steady, mostly. Not the talking points, not the producers, not the consultants. It was that living room, that history. Those girls watching her who didn't see her as a brand, but as Jazzy, who used to sell candy out of her backpack to buy school shoes. "All right," the floor manager signaled with 2 fingers. "We're up." The music played, the cameras rolled, and suddenly the world shrank into 4 chairs, a few mics, and the red light that meant speak, like you mean it. "Congresswoman Crockett," the moderator began, "you've been described as one of the most vocal new leaders in the Democratic Party. You've gone viral more than once for your confrontations during House hearings, but critics say this approach risks style over substance. How do you respond to that?" There it was. First question, no time to ease in. She didn't blink. "I think style without substance is theater," Jasmine said, voice steady. "But substance without courage is silence, and we've had enough of that." The moderator raised his eyebrows slightly, impressed. A low murmur from the panel. Torvald smirked, not in a friendly way. But before the moderator could follow up, a producer leaned in from off-camera and handed him a note. His eyes flicked down, then back up. "We're going to take a moment," he said, glancing toward the monitor, "to share a brief message from someone who's been deeply invested in the future of this country's leadership." But no one, especially not Jasmine, expected what came next. From the outside, Jasmine looked composed, but inside, it was noise. Sharp, jagged, unrelenting. She kept her gaze forward as the screen behind the panel lit up, casting a soft glow on the backs of their chairs. The audience, silent. The crew, still. The moderator, expressionless. A graphic slid onto the monitor. A message from President Barack Obama. Jasmine's fingers froze against the armrest. She felt her throat tighten, but she didn't move. She didn't shift in her seat. She didn't breathe too deeply. Cameras notice everything. Why didn't anyone tell her? She glanced sideways. Torvald didn't flinch, which meant he probably knew. Denton looked mildly curious. Reynes leaned forward with the satisfied look of someone ready to be quoted. The video began. Obama's voice came through low, calm, familiar. The kind of voice that once gave a nation goosebumps. Tonight, I want to speak directly to those leading the next generation of progress in this country. It was meant to be encouragement. But Jasmine heard something else in his tone. Measured, distant. There was no warmth, no shout-out, no recognition. She'd met Obama twice, briefly. Once backstage at an NAACP fundraiser, and once during a Democratic leadership retreat. Both times he was polite, respectful, but not engaged. She always figured it was timing, that maybe he just hadn't seen her work up close. But this wasn't disinterest. This felt personal. Obama continued, "We're at a turning point, where visibility and volume are often confused for effectiveness, where some elected officials chase attention instead of change, where the performance of politics threatens to overtake its purpose." A few audience members shifted in their seats. The air inside the studio got heavier. Jasmine stared ahead, forcing her face to stay neutral. She wasn't going to give them a headline. Not here, not live. But inside, her thoughts were flying. Was that about me? He didn't name me. But who else has been called the viral congresswoman all year? He knows exactly what he's doing. Her memory raced back to last month's judiciary hearing, the one where she took down a smug Texas representative with a single phrase and a side-eye. It made the rounds on Twitter. MSNBC replayed it for a week. She didn't plan it. It just happened. But the way people reacted, you'd think she danced for it. She hated that. But she also knew the game. When you're a young black woman in Congress, they don't give you attention unless you force them to look. Quiet competence, that gets you buried. But show them sharp words, a sharp suit, and a spine, and suddenly, they can't stop watching. Then they start resenting. Obama's video wound down. To truly lead, we have to remember that it's not about who claps for you online. It's about who's safer, freer, and better off, because you showed up. The screen faded to black. Silence. The studio didn't clap. No one moved. The moderator looked stunned, almost unsure of what to say. Then his eyes flicked toward Jasmine. She didn't turn toward the camera. She didn't look at anyone. Her voice came before the words fully formed. I looked up to that man. It slipped out, quieter than she intended, like she was talking to herself. The moderator leaned in. "Congresswoman?" She cleared her throat. "Sorry, I looked up to President Obama since I was 16. I used to memorize his speeches the way some girls memorize song lyrics. I had posters of him, not as a celebrity, but as proof that someone like me could make it." She paused. Her voice didn't crack, not yet, but it hovered on the edge. "But I never chased claps. I chased impact. And I think a lot of us got into this work, not because we wanted attention, but because we were sick of watching people suffer in silence." The panel remained silent. The camera zoomed in slowly. Back home in Texas, her mom had texted again. "Hold your head up, you're doing what they never had to." But Jasmine felt exposed, like her insides had been placed on a tray and passed around for commentary. She adjusted her mic with one hand and crossed her legs slowly to buy a second. Her eyes scanned the studio audience, but all she saw were blurred faces. What stung wasn't just the implication that she was shallow, it was who it came from. Obama was supposed to get it. If anyone understood the line she had to walk every day between presence and purpose, voice and value, it should have been him. But she wasn't going to let this moment define her, not yet. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Jasmine sat in the center of that silence, holding her posture like armor. On her right, Senator Denton tapped a pen against her notepad, soft but steady, like a metronome ticking through the tension. On her left, Dr. Reynes cleared his throat, then folded his arms, settling into what looked like academic observation mode. The moderator glanced at his producer again, silently asking, "Do I move on? Do I dig in?" He decided to pivot. "Senator Torvald," he said, "you've been in public service for over 4 decades. You've seen multiple waves of political change. Do you agree with President Obama's concerns about style overtaking substance?" Torvald gave a soft chuckle, as if the moment called for amusement. "Well," he said, brushing invisible lint off his suit, "I think President Obama speaks from experience. And let's be honest, these days, it's hard to tell if some members of Congress are crafting policy or curating content." It was a jab, a precise one. Jasmine didn't look at him, but she felt every syllable. Dr. Reynes jumped in next, leaning slightly forward. "There's definitely been a shift. Younger representatives are stepping into roles once occupied by institutional figures. The platforms have changed. The communication style has changed. But so has the pressure. Every move they make is magnified. That part at least felt fair." But then Denton added, "The challenge is knowing when to be bold and when to be quiet. I think some of our newer colleagues haven't found that balance yet." That wasn't neutral, that was directed. Jasmine shifted her body just enough to square herself to the panel. She didn't rush to respond. She let the pause stretch long enough that everyone had to look at her. Then she spoke. "I get it," she said. "You want a certain tone, a certain tempo, something that doesn't make anyone too uncomfortable." She let the words hang there for half a second. "But I didn't run for Congress to match your rhythm. I ran because back in my district, people are drowning in policies made by people who've never set foot where they live. They don't care if I'm polished. They care if I show up and fight." Denton looked down. Jasmine kept going. "I'm not here to entertain anyone. I didn't spend my 20s buried in case law and public housing codes just to be told I'm too loud for the room." Torvald leaned back in his chair, lips pressed tight. The moderator watched Jasmine carefully. "Congresswoman," he said, "to be fair, no one here used your name, but you seem to have taken this message personally." Jasmine nodded once, deliberate. "I did, because it felt personal. And because I'm tired of pretending that being black, young, and outspoken in Congress doesn't come with a target stitched right into your blazer." The room went still again. The words weren't dramatic, they were honest, and that's what made them cut deeper. She thought about how many nights she'd stayed up studying legislation line by line while Twitter flooded with clips of her questioning witnesses. They liked the clips, the noise, the fire. But behind every viral moment was 10 hours of prep, 15 pages of notes, and a team that worked like hell just to be taken seriously. And now she was being reduced to a hashtag. She leaned into her mic. "There's a difference between being seen and being heard. I didn't come here to be watched. I came here to work. But somehow, people still think if a woman like me raises her voice, it must be for attention, not because something's wrong." There were murmurs from the audience now. A woman in the front row nodded.